Words have meanings. It's occurred to me that much of my audience may simply have a passing interest in gender critical or feminist topics. Much of what I report on is of interest to a wide variety of people, and I welcome people from all backgrounds to hear my point of view and to provide their own. I am well assured of my own conclusions based on the facts, and I don't aim to convince anyone of anything. I'm not here to persuade you, just to inform you, and to hope that you can make your own conclusions when you have more information. Many seem to think that we are in agreement due to an overlap in certain beliefs, or have claimed the label of radical feminist because they have been branded a TERF, which is a misnomer and often used interchangeably with lesbian. There's a certain sense of label grabbing, similar to that of the trans right movement, wherein people seem to believe that all you need to be a radical feminist is to claim to be one. A radical feminist is one that practices radical feminism. Radical feminism has a set goal and beliefs that are integral to working towards that goal. I hesitate to call these beliefs because they truly are logical conclusions from the given facts about gendered behavior and sex-based oppression. There is no emotion-based decision-making here, merely looking at the world for what it truly is, regardless of how much we may dislike the conclusions we come to. It is a difficult ideology to ascribe to, particularly because it calls for action that goes against the status quo and which will be comfortable to ascribe to, as those actions may even be punished societally through overt and covert ways. Radical feminism requires an understanding that, number one, society is fundamentally a patriarchy where men oppress women on account of their sex and reproductive ability, and that in order to liberate women from subjugation in the society, there must be a radical reordering of the current status quo, in which male supremacy is eliminated from being the underlying ideology of all societies. 2. Prostitution is paid rape. Consent cannot be bought, and therefore paying for sex is nothing more than a bribe for not fighting back. Sex work is dehumanizing, dangerous, and traumatic. 85% of those who enter the field have experienced a history of sexual abuse in childhood, with 70% reporting having experienced incest. Girls and women in prostitution have a mortality rate 40 times higher than the national average. Regardless of the current supposedly sex-positive view, which centers their experiences of online service providers for women on the streets, and often glorifies prostitution as being both feminist and potentially empowering, the majority of prostitutes would leave the industry if given the chance and resources. The rebranding of prostitution as sex work promotes the idea that sex is a labor for women and a leisure for men, further positioning men as being served by women during sex, which perpetuates unequal social and economic power between the sexes. Radical feminists support the Nordic model, which decriminalizes all those who are prostituted, provides support services to help them exit, and makes buying people for sex a criminal offense. Number 3. Pornography is prostitution on camera with similar rates of abuse for performers. Acting in porn is often characterized by drug use, a lack of informed consent, and psychological trauma. Just because people agree to it and are paid does not negate the harm they experience in doing so, any more than a sweatshop worker in China's agreement to work negates the risk of cancer from the chemicals they work with. For viewers, exposure to pornography puts viewers at an increased risk of developing sexually deviant tendencies, committing sexual offenses, experiencing difficulties in intimate relationships, and accepting rape myths. Number 4. Surrogacy positions a woman's womb for rent and is no different than paying for a kidney or other body part. Surrogacy has often been outsourced to disadvantaged women in developing countries where they are unable to give informed consent, face poor treatment, and health risks. Women's bodies are not products to sell, use, or buy. Number 5. Women should have complete and utter control of her reproductive system, which has systematically been used to subjugate and control women. PIV presents extra risks to women rather than men and is an unequal act. Women should have informed and accurate medical care and should have complete control over when and if she has sex. Number 6. The nuclear family allows for the isolation of women, financially and emotionally, and presents financial dependence on men as the norm, which creates the potential for abuse and difficulty in securing independence if needed. Number 7. BDSM/kink illustrates the continued power imbalance between men and women via sex, as the majority of subs are women and the majority of doms are men. BDSM fetishizes slavery, power imbalances, rape, incest, pedophilia, and abuse. The pairing of orgasm to abusive behavior has implications outside of the bedroom, and consent does not negate that many women involved in BDSM were previously victims of abuse and that the act of abusing someone still leads to physical and emotional abuse and trauma in victims. Number 8. All holy books were written by men and serve to maintain and legitimize patriarchal power structures. There are no matriarchal religions. Patriarchal religions falsely attribute the gift of creation to men, when in reality every man on earth was molded from the flesh of women. Number 9. Radical feminism is based on materialism and the lived reality of women around the globe, wherein women are oppressed because of their biology rather than chosen identity, and is therefore not subjectable to changes or personal interpretations as postmodernism and queer theory are. Number 10. The beauty industry serves the patriarchy by making a profit off of the insecurities of women, establishing female self-worth as being dependent on male judgment, and plays into pedophilic culture by insisting that the pinnacle of beauty is to mimic the prepubescent body. Number 11. Marriage has historically been a transaction in which a daughter was property sold from father to husband, allowing for the exploitation of her reproductive, domestic, emotional, and physical labor, and is how marriage continues to work in most societies. Radical feminists are marriage critical. Number 12. Although it is easier to believe that we act as agents of our own free will, radical feminism follows class analysis and presents the importance of analyzing the reasons behind our actions and acknowledging that our personal choices are influenced by greater societal trends. Number 13. Gender is a social class which is assigned based on one's sex. Sex is innate, and gender is the series of roles, expectations, socialization, cultural practices, and personality traits applied to that sex. Radical feminists want to abolish gender, which is used as a means of oppressing women, and is at odds with trans rights activism, which regards gender as innate. Number 14. The goal of women's liberation is to dismantle power structures by males, and to reject a woman's role within society as a lesser class. There are many ways to achieve these goals. Separatism and male exclusion is perhaps the most drastic, but ultimately the safest option, wherein one's life and actions are centered around females in all possible aspects, and includes the protection of female-only spaces. Introspection can serve as a way to self-improve, wherein one analyzes their own actions and asks why. Raising awareness is one of the easiest ways to moving forward, to finding and creating more solutions for the community. Political action is also essential to maintaining and codifying female rights and protections. You may not agree with every belief on this list, but at its core, this is what radical feminism is. These conclusions are integral to what radical feminism is, and they are not optional. To be a radical feminist, you must take actions that work towards the realization of these goals. If you are not taking action, if you merely identify as, then you aren't a radical feminist. Not yet, anyway. And of course, just because you don't agree with everything on this list doesn't mean that your input and beliefs aren't worthy of care. I think that it's better to have allies that are working towards enlightenment than to demand perfection from everyone. However, I do think it would be beneficial if people would stop using radical feminism when they don't actually mean radical feminism. You might just mean feminism, or you might just mean gender critical, or you might just mean person who doesn't like trans people. In which case, be specific, because the truth is, radical feminism is women's liberation, and that's really all it is. This, dear viewers, is where we part. This is another one of the videos that's going to be on getting rid of misconceptions. I've kind of done this topic before, but personally, it's just one that kind of gets on my nerves a bit, because people will be arguing in the comment section on stuff like, the beauty industry. And I feel like a lot of people aren't getting that personal choice doesn't really matter when it comes to radical feminism. There are certain parts of this ideology that you just have to agree with, as they are an integral part of being a radical feminist. And if you don't agree with that, then you're not a radical feminist, and that's fine. Just don't call yourself one if you're not one. Not wearing makeup, not shaving, these are all really small things that people have really strong opposition to. People will definitely be there supporting, being critical of transitioning, being critical of the healthcare system, which, great. But it's uncomfortable to turn that introspection inwards. It's uncomfortable to look at yourself and say, why am I doing these things? Because the minute you think too deeply on it, it's one of those things that's like breaking an eggshell. You can't put it back together once you've broken through. You can't undo it once you've done it. You can't unrealize the truth. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of uncomfortable in general to be so aware of so much suffering all the time, but I think that it's better to be aware than it is to be ignorant. But I know that not everyone may choose that. It's easier to go along with ignorance is bliss. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. Please join my membership thingy. I'm trying to leave Cambodia, and I am poor. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.